see when I look, I didn't change the little subtitle there. We are in the final week of the series called What Would Jesus Undo? Unlike what we're used to, what would Jesus do? We're looking at the things he would reverse, the things that would tear his heart apart, things that he just wouldn't have liked about us. The first week in the series we said Jesus would undo our spiritual indifference, or basically lukewarm Christianity. And the second week we said that Jesus would undo hollow worship. And in the third week we said that one of the things that Jesus simply cannot stand is hypocrisy. Today, unlike the hollow worship, it says, I don't know why it even says that. I thought I changed that. I don't know why it would say that, considering we did hypocrisy last week. But the thing we're looking at this week is actually spiritual pride. Spiritual pride. I want to start just by telling you a quick story about he's a pastor now, but when he first went to seminary, his wife and him moved to this new place so that he could attend seminary. And he was really determined to do really well. He wanted to just knock it out of the park and everything. And in his very first class, he was given the assignment of writing a paper 5 to 7 pages long. So as he worked on this, he finished it up. One thing he realized is that his wife was basically like an English major. She's a whiz. She knew everything, like as far as grammar would go. She knew it. So when he got done writing this paper, he said, "Honey, would you mind taking a look at my paper and just editing it for me?" So of course she said yes, and he gave it to her and went away for like a half hour, and she whipped out the red pen and went to town. Well, when she finally gave him the paper, it was so marked up, and he said there was things that she was talking about that he didn't even understand what she was talking about. And he looked at it and he said to her, he said, "Honey, I just wanted you to edit my paper, not completely rewrite it." So he said, "You know what, thanks, but I've got this." And he took her marked up paper and threw it in the garbage. He printed out another paper of his. He edited it himself, and then he turned that one in. And sure enough, he got it back, and it was a D-. And the professor had written to him that this paper was not master's level work, and he was told to rewrite it and resubmit it. So now he has to go back to his wife and probably do what most of us men have had to do at some point in time. "Honey, sorry, you were right. Would you please help me, and would you please re-edit this?" To which he said that she just leaned in and simply said, "Would you mind saying that again?" So, you're right. And most of the time you women are, usually you're right. And it kills us to say that. He had let his pride get to him. And we often let pride get to us. And I don't know if you've heard that famous saying, but it goes, pride comes before the fall. And that's something we often have to learn the hard way. What we're looking at today, though, is spiritual pride, okay? And this is a misplaced sense of worth or value. So when we kind of sometimes think we're better than what we really are, right? I've heard it said before, and you maybe have heard this too, that one of the most loving things you can do to somebody is to look them in the eye and tell them the truth. All right? And that's not always an easy thing, but I think so often that's really what our Bibles do to us. And I think that's why so many people have so many issues with the Bible, is because the Bible really forces us to look at ourselves and evaluate ourselves, and it tells us the truth about ourselves. What I wanted to do is I want to tell you a quick story. Well, not a quick story, but it's a story today. I'm going to tell you a story about two guys who go to the same place for the same purpose, and one of these guys leaves right with God, and the other one just leaves not right with God. I want to start this. This is Jesus talking to a bunch of individuals who have a problem. And these are individuals who put a little too much pride in themselves, is who he's talking to here. So this is what Jesus says. Okay. Seems awfully like things aren't right. I'm going to start something first. He said, and he also told this parable to some people who trusted in themselves they were righteous and viewed others with contempt. Okay? So, he's talking to these people who are trusting in themselves, who view themselves as righteous, and they view other people as not as good as them. That's basically what's happening here. We often have so much pride in ourselves, that we have so much confidence in ourselves, that we trust in ourselves too much, and it's damaging in so many ways. Pride causes us, when we have too much pride, it causes us to look down on others, to think less of others, and not only does it cause us to think of less of others, but it affects our relationships with them, and most importantly is it affects our relationship with Christ. So this goes on to say, two men went up into the temple to pray. One, a Pharisee. So one, the Pharisee's the good guy. Is what these people who are listening to this, who are also high on themselves, who are full of spiritual pride, they're going to look at the Pharisee as being the good guy. And the other, a tax collector, the bad guy. Okay, so two men go up to the temple to pray. Okay? These two men are both going to the place that represents God's presence. This is where God is supposed to be. This is where God is supposed to be visible and present to them, right? Now the Pharisee, we just said, is the good guy, all right? He's the respected guy. If I tell you, and you know, some of you know this already, if I tell you the Old Testament had 613 laws, all right? Some of you would be aware that there were 613 laws that the Jewish people had to, abide by. This guy would not only have known those 613 laws, he would have been able to tell you the 613 laws because he had memorized them. This guy was kind of like a pastor of a church, he was a church leader. So this is somebody who the people looked up to, okay? And then we have a tax collector who we've talked about before, was known as being the lowest of the low. They were despised individuals. They were working for Rome. And Rome had taken over your city, if you can imagine that. And now the people who have taken over your city and everything, now this guy's working for them, and he's still collecting taxes for them. So he's coming to you to take your money, to give to them, to give to the enemy. And then not only that, but he's taking extra to line his pockets too. So he was despised, and he was like the drug dealer selling to the high school or to the middle school kids. This is who we're talking about here, okay? So we got the good guy and we got the bad guy, okay? Straightforward. We have Luke Skywalker versus Darth Vader. Okay? We had Chuck Norris versus whoever Chuck Norris is beating up that day. That's what we're looking at. Alright? The Pharisee stood and was praying this to himself or by himself. God, I thank you that I am not like other people, swindlers, unjust, adulterers, or even like this tax collector. I fast twice a week. I pay tithes of all that I get. All right? So what is this Pharisee saying? Hey, I follow all the rules. I know all the rules. I know all 613 of the rules. I do the right things. I'm good. I'm better than all the rest of the individuals. I'm better than everyone else here around me. And I'm comparatively good compared to everybody else. Thank you, God, that I am not like these other people. Now the Pharisee, we hear that and we think, wow, that's terrible. Well, really, the Pharisee wasn't completely wrong in a lot of ways, right? Because he did have a lot to be proud of, right? I mean, like where you and I maybe memorize a verse of the Bible, he would have memorized the first 5 books of the Bible. So he's far better than we are in so many areas, right? But instead of realizing what he had as a gift from God, he saw himself as a gift to God. And we do that too very often. Because spiritual pride gives us false promises, okay? We get self-sufficiency, you know, like when we have spiritual pride, you know, I've got this. I don't need anybody else's help. I have it all together. It's all under control. I'm going to do right. I'm a good person, right? It also gives us self-importance because we see this. None of you, of course. None of you. But we see this in Christians where, you know, they attend a church or something like that, and they, instead of looking at the church as being a blessing in their life, you know, a place to go, to be around other people who share similar beliefs in them, and just letting it fulfill their lives, they look at it as, well, you know what, this church is lucky to have me. Probably all know people like that. We have this feeling of I'm better, you know, hey, everybody look at me, you know, I'm good. Look at my car, look at my house, look at the job I have, look at it, look. Tell me I'm great, tell me. Go ahead. Tell me I'm great, right? Spiritual pride leads to this inward directed emotion that leads to outward directed actions. So we have these feelings inside and then we let them come outside. And they're not always so good. I remember growing up at the age of 16, I remember getting a moped. Well, I still remember a little blue moped, put a little basket on the back of it so I could carry things, and if you put something too heavy in it, it was only held on by bungee cords. You go around the corner and the basket would go and hopefully it would come back up. And I think when you're really having a good day, you could hit like 26 miles per hour on that baby, going downhill. I tell you, when you ride a moped for very long, it's a character builder. It is one of those things where I love the moped. I kind of wish I still had it because I would probably be much more proud to bebop around on that now. But I tell you, when those days, you don't really want your friends to see you on that. I think when you're not really going to pick up women as a young teenager or anything like that. As a matter of fact, I think when I would ride down the street on that thing and I would see girls in the distance, I think they would hide behind trees and stuff as I got close. Now, however, one day I bought my first car, and I will say, compared to what most people buy as their new car, I bought a car that was really nice. Not a scratch on it. It was very sporty looking. It turned the eyes of people when you would go by them. Of course, you know, you have your music playing as loud as you can, make them turn their eyes. They hear you coming up from 2 blocks away. But if Chris was here today, he would tell you, yeah, he remembers probably that car because he would be off in the passenger in it, and we would be driving around, and we'd be talking to girls and stuff like that with that car. So it's just amazing how inner emotions affect your outward actions in so many ways. We fall into the trap of thinking that our ultimate value is based on our accomplishments, right? Moped bad, nice car good, right? We feel better about ourselves. And we compare ourselves to others, right? We are different from the Pharisee in some ways, but we have pride. We have misplaced values. You know where we really have a lot of pride, where we really do poorly with this, and where we really start comparing ourselves to others is when it comes to being parents and our children. Well, we can be awfully proud of our kids. And if you even think about how bad it's gotten nowadays, your kids, or the kids that are out there, have never done anything wrong in school. It's always the teacher's fault. Now, and how often is it you think, well, you know what, I remember saying, you know what, my kid was, I'm sorry on age, such and such old, and oh, he finally said his first word, and I'm so proud. And so, you know, there's another parent there who's got to compare that and say, yeah, well, my kid said his first word when he was 3 days old. Somebody's always out there as a parent to try to one-up you. We're terrible as parents at trying to compare, right? And we can continue to compare ourselves. People compare ourselves against Christians and say, I don't need God because, well, I'm better than those Christians, right? And like I said, the attention-seeking with our pride, the attention-seeking, look at me. We do that out there. We do that in worship services, where if you attend a big church, you're kind of checking out everybody else to see if you're better than the rest of those that are in that service with you. We do that, and we've said countless of times, we do that with our Instagram posts, and we do that with our Facebook posts, or whatever's out there. We just do it. Most of us don't struggle with spiritual pride as far as thinking we're too righteous, or at least letting it be known that way. What happens is a lot of us, we try to convince others that we're maybe not quite as good as we would like to be, but really it's just so that we can get them to say, oh yes, you are. Right? We love that. I'll tell you, like someone will say, nice shoes, and you'll say something like, oh, well, I got them on sale. It's better to be lucky than, you know. So you don't really want to take credit, but in reality, there's this pride that's in you. Yes, they are some nice shoes. And you know, and we will say stuff like, you know what, I could never post a Bible verse, or I could never serve in leadership, or God couldn't use me, I wouldn't dare to share my faith, and we're just waiting for someone to say, oh, you'd be the best at it. Right, so we downplay their pride to being less than what it is. And, you know, we like to do, I see this one I do see this one on social media a lot. I see the woe is me, just so somebody will sweep in and say, oh, what's wrong? We see that a lot. We think, I just don't know what to, I don't know. But we see this all the time. So what would Jesus undo? Jesus would undo our spiritual pride. That just gets us in so many ways. When we are full of ourselves, there's no room for God. And that's what happens, is we are so full of ourselves that we don't have any room to use God in our life. So what does Jesus do to these individuals he's sitting around having this conversation with that all think they're high and mighty? And he shows them that there's a different way. And this is what he says to them. He says, but the tax collector, standing some distance away, was even unwilling to lift up his eyes to heaven, but was beating his breast, saying, God be merciful to me, the sinner. So this tax collector is the exact opposite of what this Pharisee was. He's standing at a distance, it says. He's feeling unworthy to enter the temple. And some of you have maybe felt that way before with going into a church. Oh, I'm not worthy to go into the church, right? And we say, if they only knew what I've done wrong, God would probably strike that building with lightning if I was to go in it. So many things like that, and we know that's not true. The tax collector couldn't even lift his head, it says. And his prayer had confession, acknowledgement of who God was. And he didn't even rationalize or attempt to justify anything like we kind of do with our own prayers sometimes. We screw up and we kind of confess our screw up to God. But then we say, well, God, this is why I did it, right? Or some form of that. He recognizes that he comes up short. And he recognizes that without God's help, that he's hopeless. That he can't make things right by himself. And Jesus continues. He says, I tell you, this man went to his house justified rather than the other. For everyone who exalts himself will be humbled, but he who humbles himself will be exalted. Now, can you imagine the shock of these people saying, what, the tax collector is the one you're going to tell us is right? Jesus shocks these people. The tax collector went home justified, not the Pharisee. While the Pharisee was full of spiritual pride, the tax collector emptied himself out before God and humbled himself. And that's what we need to do. We need to empty ourselves out. We need to humble ourselves before God. When we empty ourselves, we are in the perfect position to be filled by God's grace, but not until we empty ourselves out. I wish I could tell you when it comes to emptying ourselves out that there was some sort of magic wand, that there was a secret blue or red pill that would help you empty yourself out, that there's a silver bullet or something like that. But there is no secret to it. It's like peeling an onion. You just have to start peeling your layers back and emptying yourself out a little bit at a time, humbling yourself to God. And there's going to be times when it's going to be hard because your pride is going to get in the way. And you're going to struggle with simple things in your life that seem so complicated, and you're not going to want to admit your weaknesses. But there's going to be times when, one of your teenagers is going to be off the rails. There's going to be times when you're at financial stress, and you're not going to want to humble yourselves. You're going to want to be strong and everything. There's going to be times when your relationships are going to be in trouble, and your marriage is going to have stress on it. There's going to be so many issues, and you're going to be thinking, this isn't even what I signed on for. What do I do? And the answer is we humble ourselves. When we empty ourselves, we're in the perfect position to be used by God. When we humble ourselves, we're in perfect position to be used by God, but not until we humble ourselves. And you know what? Probably as so many pastors out there have gone in the world that think, I'm going to get into ministry, and I'm going to go out there and I'm going to save and change the lives of 50,000 people. And that doesn't happen. Some of them it does. And then I'm going to change the lives of 1,000 people, and that might not happen. 500, and that might not happen. And then you're looking at 100, and maybe that doesn't happen. And you start thinking, this isn't even what I signed on for, God. So how do I deal with this and everything? And maybe it's 50 people. And you hear God say, well, what if the number that you're going to change the life of is just 50 people? But what if it's not 50 people? What if it's 20 people? What if it's 5 people? What if it's just one person, and that one person that I'm going to change the life is your own? Can you humble yourself before me? Can you drop your spiritual pride? What if the lives I'm going to change is just you and your family? Can you drop your spiritual pride and accept that? When you empty yourself with a humble heart, you are in the perfect position to be used by God. Because when you do that, you'll find out, and it might not be for a lot of people, it might be for just you and your family, but you might find out that God has called you, God has equipped you, and God can be glorified through you. And you might think, yeah, you know what, but I'm just a stay-at-home mom. I'm just a stay-at-home dad. What can God do through me? And it's amazing what God can do through you, because if you're a stay-at-home mom, or you're a stay-at-home dad, then God works directly through you to affect the children that you are in contact with every day. You get to be the representative of Christ in this world. You, the one they see every single day. You get to do that. You might think, you know what, I can't do that much. I'm just a construction worker. Or I'm just a CNA or something along that line. You know what? Then you get to walk out into this world every single day with Christ with you. And you get to be the representative of Christ into this world. And you get to show everybody what Christ's love and His grace is all about. And you get to be the ones, whatever job that you have, you get to be the ones that perhaps come back to a church setting or lead a youth group, and you get to be the one that shows young teenagers how to be proper men and how to be proper women in this world. God can use you in ways that you don't even realize. But God must work in you before He can work through you. That means you have to humble yourself. You see, pride is about my glory. Humility is about God's glory. So when you're feeling those emotions of fear, pride, insecurity, decision, whatever's inside of you, ask, is this for my glory, or is this for God's glory? Big difference. In the same way, Jesus speaking, let your light shine before others, that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven. Pride is about my glory. Humility is about God's glory. Which one do you want? There is no room in our lives for the pride. What would Jesus undo in our lives? He would undo the spiritual pride, and He would have us humble ourselves before Him. Because when we do that, we can experience God's love, God's grace. And when we're willing to humble ourselves before Him, then that means that God can use us to go out into this often difficult world, to shine that light into places that perhaps hasn't seen any evidence of God in so long. With so many people who are lost, so many people who are desperate, so many people out there who are feeling like they're in the dark, that we will show them that light, but we must humble ourselves before God first. Heavenly Father, we we realize that too often our pride gets in our way, and we realize that too often we compare ourselves to others, we look down on others, and we don't do the work that you would want us to do. God, we would ask that you help us to break down that wall of pride that exists within us, that we are able to humble ourselves before you, and by humbling ourselves before you, we could be the ones that you use in this world. God, we don't want to be the ones so full of pride that we miss the opportunity to help those in need. God, let us have eyes to see your grace and to see your love, but also to help us see our own issues. Let us break down that pride. Let us undo the pride in our lives. Let us undo the hypocrisy in our lives. Let us undo the hollow worship in our lives. And let us undo the lukewarm Christianity that we've talked about for the last 4 weeks. And let us be better servants to you. Let the Spirit ignite a fire within us. Let us be the ones to help somebody who is desperately in need in this world. Let us be the ones that show somebody the path that leads to you. We ask all these things in Jesus Christ's name. Amen.